Hello and welcome to today's class. In this particular class, we're going to look at how we can solve quadratic equations. And so I want to start by first of all defining to you what a quadratic equation is, basically, and the format that they usually are in. So we learned about quadratic expressions, and quadratic expressions generally took the form ax squared plus bx plus c. All right. Now, what happens is when we equate this expression to zero, then it's no longer called an expression. Okay, it's now called an equation because we have literally equated it to a number, and mostly it's usually zero. So quadratic equations are usually written in the form ax squared plus bx plus c being equal to zero. Why don't we kind of handle an example to make this, easier, for you? Okay, so let's go ahead and solve our first equation. All right, so we're supposed to solve for the values of x. Okay, so basically, whatever answer we're going to get here are going to be the values of x, and usually we call them roots. Okay, when this equation is represented graphically, then it will make more sense. These are usually the coordinates of x where the curves cut in the x-axis. Okay, so those are basically what we call the roots, and that is the solution that we're trying to solve in we're trying to find in this particular problem. All right, so we're going to solve this problem in this particular class and many more involved using factorization method. We learned about factorization method in our previous video, and so we want to see how we can use factorization method to solve this particular problem of quadratic equation. All right, so with factorization method, we said that you're always supposed to think of the product, and the product was supposed to be the product of AC. In this particular case, our A is 1 and our C is negative 54. So basically, that's going to be 1 times negative 54 to give us negative 54. Then you're supposed to think about the sum. And so when you're thinking about the sum, always look at the value of b in the equation. So in this particular case, our sum will be equal to 3. So we have to then think of two numbers that when we multiply together, all right, two numbers that when we multiply together will give us negative 54. And when we add them, will give us 3. So those two numbers that when multiplied will give us negative 54, and when added will give us 3, should be 9 and negative 6. All right, so when you multiply 9 by negative 6, you are going to get negative 54. And when you add these two, then you are going to get 3. So we are basically going to rewrite the equation using 9 and negative 6 in the place of b, that is 3x. So that's going to be x squared plus 9x minus 6x. So 9x minus 6x basically is going to give us 3, which is the value of b there, minus 54. And all of that will equate to 0. Awesome. So then we pair them and collect and factorize them. We pair them and factorize them. So this is going to be our first pair. So when we factorize that, x is going to be common. So we're going to have x squared divided by x giving us x, and 9x divided by x giving us 9. All right, minus 6 is going to be our common factor there. So basically, negative 6x divided by negative 6 is going to give us x, and a negative number divided by negative number basically is going to be a positive, and so it's going to be 54 divided by 6 giving us 9, and all that should be equal to 0. Right, so now that we're looking at the terms that are within the bracket and seeing that they're identical, we're going to factorize them by grouping, okay? So basically this is going to leave us with x minus 6 into x plus 9 equals to 0. Awesome. So we've factorized our quadratic equation and we've equated it to 0. Now, for us to find the value of x, which in this case is going to be they're going to be 2, we will treat this in a scale. We will treat this particular equation such that either this term here is 0 or this is 0. So basically we're going to equate this to 0, and we're also going to equate this to 0. So what I'm trying to say here is, remember, any number multiplied by 0 will be 0, will always be 0. So we don't know which one of these terms is actually equal to 0. We all know, however, that either one of them is equal to 0. Why? Because the product of these two is giving us 0, all right? So we know that either this or this particular term here is equal to 0. So since we do not know which one will be equal to 0, we will find the possible values of x that would make this 0 and make this here 0. So basically our x1 value will be equal to x minus 6. Okay, we're just going to pick the first term, x minus 6, and we will equate it to 0. And then we will make x a subject to the formula. And so that's going to give us x being equal to 6. All right, so that's going to be the first value of x. And we're going to call it x1. Okay, the first value of our root is going to be that. Then for x2, we are going to take x plus 9 equals to 0. Of course, we make x the subject to the formula, and we're going to call that x2. So basically, it's going to be negative 9. So the values of this, the solutions of this problem, this quadratic equation, basically are going to be 6 and negative 9. And that is how we deal, that is how we basically solve quadratic equations. Let me give you another example just to make it all easy for you. Awesome. So looking at example 2, we again have a quadratic equation, and basically we are supposed to solve this, equate it to 0, and then find the solutions of x1 and x2. And we are going to solve this using factorization. There are many other methods that we can use to solve it, but in this particular video, we are kind of just focusing on how to use factorization to solve quadratic equations. All right. So think of products. Okay. Think of product, and when you talk of product, we're talking of A times C. Which in this particular case will be 1 times negative 6, 1 times negative 6, and that is going to give us negative 6. Then you want to think about sum. And when you think about sum, you want to think about the value of B, which in this particular case happens to be 1. So we then reason and think of two numbers that when we multiply together will give us negative 6, and when we add will give us 1. And you will note that these two numbers that when multiplied together will give us negative 6 and added together will give us 1 will be 3 and negative 2. So when you take 3 times negative 2 will give you negative 6, and when you add them it will give you 1. So then we are going to write this particular equation, quadratic equation, using 3 and negative 2 for the values of B. So we are going to have it as x squared plus 3x minus 2x, so that when you take 3x minus 2x, you just get x, okay? All right, minus 6, and we're going to equate all that to 0. All right, then we pair them and factorize for each pair. So when we pair this here, we're going to have that our common factor there is x, and so x squared divided by x is going to give us x plus 3 there. All right, that is 3x divided by x, giving us 3. And then when you look at the second pair, right there, we have negative 2x minus 6. Then you notice that the common factor will be negative 2. All right, so when you take negative 2x divided by 2, you are going to get x. And a negative number divided by a negative number are going to give us a positive number. So basically 6 divided by 2 will give us 3, and all of it should be equal to 0. Then we notice that the terms within the brackets are identical. So we are going to factorize this by grouping, okay? So it's going to be x minus 2 into x plus 3 equals to 0. All right, so we assume that either the first term or the second term is equal to 0, all right? Why? Because any number multiplied by 0 should be equal to 0. We know, however, that the product of these two should give us 0. So we don't know which one of these ones is supposed to be 0. So we are going to find the possible values of x in the first and the second term that may be equal to 0. So for x1, we are going to have x minus 2 being equal to 0, all right? And so when you make x subject to the formula, basically x will be equal to 2. All right, for x2, we are going to have x plus 3, all right? That is this one here. And when equals to 0, and when you make x the subject, the formula there, basically the value of x2 will be equal to negative 3. So the two values of x are 2 and negative 3. And that's basically it. All right, for the third example, I want us to use the roots that we have. Roots are the solutions, the possible values of x, to then go ahead and derive a quadratic equation, right? And then go ahead and find a quadratic equation. So we are going to use the roots of this particular problem to try and solve that. Awesome. So for example 3, we are going to attempt to find the equation of the quadratic equation of the following roots, with the following roots, that is 2 and negative 3. So basically we are having that x1 is equal to 2 and x2 is equal to negative 3. All right, so what we're going to do, all right, what we're going to do to solve this particular problem, we are going to have a situation. We're going to equate this to 0, okay? So for us to equate this to 0, we're basically going to have these 2 taken to the left-hand side. So it's going to be x, okay, minus 2 equals to 0, all right? And we're also going to do the same for x2. So where we are going to have x plus 3 equals to 0. So based on what we know about factorization, whenever we have these two terms, x minus 2 into x plus 3, and we multiply them together, we always know that they should always be equal to 0, okay? We never know, however, which one will be 0. So we just find the possible values, and so that is what we usually work with. And so for us to find the quadratic equation of these two roots, we're just going to expand this, okay? We're just going to expand whatever we have here. So it's going to be x, we're going to break one and maintain one. So it's going to be x into x plus 3 minus 2 into x plus 3. We already did expansion. That is why I'm not trying to go into details of what is happening. So basically that's going to be x times x, giving us x squared plus 3x, okay? All right, then we're going to have negative 2x, all right, minus 6, giving us 0, all right? So when you simplify whatever we have in the middle here, we're going to have that x, we're going to have x squared, so that's going to be 3x minus 2x, which is x minus 6 is equal to 0, and that is what we were trying to derive, the quadratic equation given the roots as 2 and negative 3. So that's it for this particular class. If you have any questions, mail me or write them in the comment section, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you and have a lovely day.